Item 41, Motion 8, regarding an update on the general scheme of the Regulation of Lobbying Bill 2013. Welcome Minister McGinley to the House and call on Senator van Turnhout to move the motion.
Thank you very much.
10 minutes, Senator.
Thank you. I don't think I'll be using up all of my time, but who knows. I firstly wish to move our motion that we've put down as an independent group. That is myself, Senator Mary-Louise O'Donnell, Senator Fiach McAneil, Senator Mary-Ann O'Brien and Senator Catherine Capone. And we felt it was important to put down this private member's business, not only to focus on the important area of lobbying us as parliamentarians, but also to have partly a reflection on us as parliamentarians and the role that we play in that process. And so when I saw the government amendment, which I'll deal with more later, I was surprised that the role of parliamentarians went missing, which was actually the real focus of trying to put down this amendment, was that we would put a spotlight on parliamentarians. And it's particularly in the areas of the role of lobbying in the areas of tobacco, alcohol, gaming and other interests that have a public health and public welfare policy. And all too often, I think we've seen, I think everybody knows the tobacco industry, the role that they play. In fact, the WHO report, that's the World Health Organization report, has identified a number of forms of tobacco industry interference used to derail or weaken tobacco control. And I think we just need to look at the last few weeks and the Minister for Health's proposal in regard to the packaging. I'm going to share the list with you. Manoeuvring to hijack the political and legislative process, exaggerating the economic importance of the industry, manipulating public opinion to gain the appearance of respectability, fabricating support through front groups, discrediting proven science, and intimidating governments with litigation or threat of litigation. And that's not just me surmising. This is something that the World Health Organization has clearly identified, and I can clearly see the hallmarks here in Ireland. If we equally look at the issue of alcohol-related harm, all too much focus for me has been put onto the effects on industry. I've written 2 reports at an EU level on the effects of alcohol-related harm. It must be taken as a public health issue first and foremost. All too often we're sidetracked, derailed on the issue, but when you actually see the figures for alcohol-related harm, it is unacceptable, and we have many reports. The latest report that I was participatory in was the Joint Committee on Health and Children. In early 2012, we got all-party agreement on the committee to major recommendations in that report. They still lie without action. Why? I would surmise that the industry, drinks and spirits industry, have influenced the debate, and we've seen it with the debate around the marketing of sports and the sponsorship of sports debate. They have, in my opinion, far too much say in these issues. And my problem is that say is not happening here in this House, in the openness. It is happening behind closed doors, at meetings, at expensive dinners. If we look at the issue of tobacco industry, there are many factors that are hindering efforts to cut this unnecessary toll of death and disease. And one key issue, which has been identified by the Irish Heart Foundation and the Irish Cancer Society, is the determination and success of a rich and powerful tobacco industry in influencing vital areas of policy. The tobacco industry is one of the best funded and sophisticated corporate lobbying industries interests in the world, working to build relationships with legislators and policymakers. The tobacco industry has a fundamental conflict of interest with public health policy. For decades, the industry has worked across the world to market its killer and addictive products to children, deceiving the public about the harmful effects of tobacco use, and they fought the policies designed to reduce tobacco use and save lives. The primary obligation of tobacco companies, of drink companies, gaming companies, like any other corporation, is to deliver profits to its shareholders. It is not to be concerned about the public health issues. This means selling more of their addictive products. And I'd like to raise specifically, Minister, the World Health Organization Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, and Article 5.3 of that document about protecting public health policy from tobacco industry interference. And according to Article 5.3, there is a fundamental and irreconcilable conflict between the tobacco industry interests and public health policy interests. And for me, this is where we need to have a role that parliamentarians would declare if any approaches have been made to them by these industries concerned. It is not good enough for me that it is left to the lobbying companies who will, through maybe PR agencies, so you see on the list that I've met ABC Consultancy. For me, it is not good enough because they are representing specific interests of the industry, and I should be declaring that rather than ABC Consultancy saying they have met Senator van Turnhout. That is not accountability, and that is not transparency. And for me, what brought me to the issue is the concerns of organisations, for me, who we should be listening to, the Irish Heart Foundation and the Irish Cancer Society, who really are dealing with the cold face of these issues. And I took with concern, I was reading some of the notes that they sent me, and they have said, our organisation have been informed by a number of elected officials that tobacco industry representatives have been actively lobbying members of the Oireachtas in relation to price of tobacco products in Ireland and the volume of illicit tobacco. In addition, information gathered from parliamentary questions, media reports and freedom of information requests indicate that the tobacco industry representatives have considerable contact with Irish government officials. In my reading of Article 5.3 of the World Health Organization framework, that should not be happening. We as parliamentarians should not be accepting that that is happening. We should not be meeting them. For me, we need to ensure that we do have a clear regulatory system for lobbyists, but also for parliamentarians, that we have some code or some pledge that we would sign that in the public health and public welfare interests, that there are certain companies or sectors or vested interests that we will not meet, or in some cases we may say, yes, it is okay to meet those organisations, but we must declare. Which brings me on to very important work that Transparency International Ireland has done on a legislative footprint and its adoption. When I first came to this House, I checked with the Seanad Clerk's office about any conflict of interest that I might have if I'm putting forward amendments, and I was advised quite clearly I should make a declaration of interest. And I have actively done that. Now, the interests that I'm involved in are NGOs. It's a pro bono basis. I don't get any income from it. But just in case, for clarity, I will always declare any interest I might have. I don't hear it that often when we're coming to policy and legislation here that people will say that they've met any of these companies. And yet the Irish Heart Foundation and the Irish Cancer Society report that Oireachtas members are meeting these tobacco company representatives. So I do think it's important that we look at ensuring that when we are adopting legislation, that if contacts are made with officials, with ministers, with parliamentarians, that that footprint is clearly noted. In the European Parliament, following scandals involving parliamentarians ready to accept bribes in exchange for legislative favour, the Parliament recommended to the Bureau to establish the requirement of a legislative footprint, but it's not yet been implemented. And this, for me, goes to the crux of the difficulty that we have here, and actually goes to the crux of the motion that we put forward and the amendment. We find it very comfortable to talk about the lobbyists and how we're going to regulate and control the lobbyists, and that is important. I don't underestimate that challenge. But there is also a responsibility on ourselves as parliamentarians to say what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, which is why I was very disappointed in the amendment put forward by government that the whole discussion, and we worded it in very open language, to debate with members of Seanad the need for transparent and accountable regulations governing parliamentarians in relation to any engagement with representatives from tobacco, alcohol, gaming or other commercial and vested interests. I would really like to know, Minister, what was the problem with that paragraph? I wanted to write that we'd have a pledge, that we'd have a contract. We didn't. We left it open to have a debate here in the House. And yet government couldn't put that into their amendment? That, for me, raises serious questions. Thank you very much. My colleague, Senator Mary-Louise O'Donnell, will be seconding the motion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator, and welcome, Minister. Now, I just wish to draw the House's attention to one valuable, distinctive and relevant example of this private member's motion that you have in front of you. An independent consultant company who have expertise in winning parliamentary support travelled the corridors of Leinster House 2 to 3 months ago. In the lower house,